Let's see how this goes. Oh man, that's too much. Shit. We'll just bump that back a bit. That's close though. Fuck yeah. Oh, right there. Too far. Perfect. Fucking perfect. Let's see. Let's see. Nice.
Stalker, blah 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 Minecraft,
Oh,
blah
that's
blah
loud.
blah
Wow.
intro.
Fuck me. Had my volume up
For
or something.
starters, I'd like to address the fact that many people already know. STALCRAFT is pretty much a fanfiction of a game. As such, much of the pre-established lore and assumed knowledge comes from its main source of inspiration, Stalker. The world of Stalker establishes that, after the Chernobyl disaster back in 1986, a cabal of scientists used the restricted
put it right
area
over
as a
here.
convenient black site to run even more fucked up experiments,
I'm
particularly
gonna make it
into
even
the
bigger.
field of psionics
Oh,
and
man.
mind control.
Fuck
These
yeah.
experiments eventually culminating in the breaking point of Stalker's timeline with the real worlds. In 2006, the second disaster of Chernobyl and the zone's first blowout occurred, scorching virtually everyone inside the exclusion zone, mainly military and scientists. After this, the place was abandoned except for the military checkpoints to keep people out. Not that it did them any good, because this new disaster brought on a certain weirdness to the place that went far beyond just radiation. Mysterious new glowing rocks with miraculous properties started popping up, along with strange distortions of reality. You could be walking around and suddenly thunder would strike you, or walk into the wrong patch of grass and suddenly get your insides turned into outsides. The zone was absolutely fucked. But why? The scientists that created this issue in the first place discovered, or rather, proved the existence of the noosphere, a layer of the world's functioning atmospheres, this one being controlled by the thoughts, feeling, and the general gestalt of humanity. Of course, nothing had affected it too much thus far in history. However, with the intent of controlling it, with the typical end all wars pacifist spiel, they created a machine that allowed them to combine and excessively magnify their mental capacities, creating the sea consciousness. In theory, it would have been the greatest achievement of human history, but in reality, it just ended in disaster and punched a hole into the noosphere, making any predefined human laws and conceptions on how the world should work completely irrelevant in the zone. The main games explore the stories of three characters: Scar, a mercenary who is sent to the center of the zone to kill Strelok, since the latter's forays into the depths of Chernobyl is making the, by now, still sapient sea consciousness send out increasingly intense emissions with the intent of killing anyone behind it, protecting the outside world of the zone's harmful influence. He succeeds, but in the process, an entire faction is destroyed, and Strelok, surviving the last blowout that should have killed him along with Scar, is stricken with amnesia. Sent out to the cordon by a truck-driving zombie, he only has one objective: to kill Strelok. Of course, he doesn't know that's himself, just yet, that is, going by the name of Marked One up until the point in which he finds out. The canonical ending is his discovery of the sea consciousness and his destruction of it. This ending originally seemed to be a good thing. With the grass and the dragonfly and everything, the zone is free from sea consciousness control after all. No more zombified stalkers for the most part, and the monolith, the sea consciousness's main brainwashed fighting force, is disbanded. However, with the last game and the Ktiarev's foray into the area, turns out shit's not so sweet. Without a sea consciousness to keep the zone in check, blowouts happen pretty much any time. Monolith is without a mind-controlling deity, but they still worship it whenever they can, and they still defend the center of the zone of outsiders. The zone is expanding with every blowout, and shit's gonna get real ugly really fast. So he bails out of there with Strelok and a small military team he was sent in to rescue in the first place. So now that we know the original story upon which STALCRAFT lays its foundations, let us explore their own unique interpretation of it.
So good.
Yeah? Oh, and Minecraft is also there. There's no references to Minecraft lore, so no ender dragons or nether portals or enchantments. Just yet, that is.
Oh my god. Okay, is that where? No. No. Well, maybe. I feel like that's good enough. That's totally cropped. Totally.
Our journey starts in the swamps to the southern reaches of the zone. Lately, there's been a notable rise in the influx
Shit.
of newcomers to the zone and the miraculous properties of the artifacts within, powering buildings, curing diseases, all types of positive shit. So of course, a lot of people are breaking into the place in order to get a slice of the action. That and a group of stalkers who are being referred to as the Blessed. All of them are affected by the same dreams, or rather, the same nightmares. A blue sphere calling them to come to the zone, a nightmare so strong, the player character can't help but drop everything and venture into the zone to figure out this mystery. Not after having one last, vivid dream about a man running around the halls of the power plant, finding the blue sphere, and then promptly being shot by his own allies.
Finally! Prepare the laboratory. You had us warned.
Perfect. Now it's totally cropped. Nice. Alright. Just gonna sit here and totally not
You wake up, regardless of your faction, and you're greeted by Linden.
get
His
pissed
fucked up
off.
looks and the fact that he greets you regardless of whether you're a bandit or a stalker makes me think he's pretty well liked by most folks, being allowed into both bases. Either that, or it's just, because it's a video game. Welcome to the swamps. You'll be staying either on the boathouse or on Ataman's HQ. You crossed into the zone on a boat, which promptly got fucked up by an underwater anomaly. The locals have enough compassion to treat you, but not to help you out regarding your blessedness. Not only that, being blessed is a bit of a taboo. The consensus is that most people don't like them, and that if you are one, hopefully you're the type who can keep it to themselves. Of course, there's some who are more affected by this condition and can't help themselves from being strange. Either way, your job right now is to get to work, get a reputation and a name for yourself. No one likes a layabout, after all. As a bandit, you'll be working for Saint, the local underworld leader and de facto king of the bandits in the zone. A real mobster looking dude who probably has shady connections in the outside world. His head looks extremely fucked up from the side too. The loners have Ataman to look up to, the local boss and a guiding figure to help newbies get settled. He's got a pretty sweet armor and seems to be a veteran of the zone. From this point on, even though there's a myriad of tasks and questlines for you to get immersed in, the main storyline will take you from base to base, further and further into the entrails of the zone as you try to solve the mystery surrounding your status as a blessed and the significance of the blue sphere dreams, trying to convince your local leader into setting up a meeting with Shaman, a stalker who seems to be pretty well versed in the topic. For starters, however, you are tasked with solving a murder mystery. Your local leader tells you about Scooper, a stalker who is pretty well regarded even though he's a blessed. He can find his way through pretty much anything and he is known to rescue stalkers who are in trouble. He has been killed and only 3 stalkers were seen with him last, one of them being Coxcomb. Of course, Coxcomb, being the jumpy, crying, argumentative type, is clearly revealed to be the killer in the end. Shortly after visiting his shack, you find the damning evidence, and just before you can confront him in front of your faction leader, he runs away. And so, as you give chase, you will come across this weird stalker with scars on his face and a weird armor. He'll tell you that Coxcomb was being chased by mutants, and that he headed into the trees nearby, and so you give chase once more. It's too late, however. Like by about a couple of minutes. Coxcomb is dead, though his throat is slit, which isn't the typical work of a mutant. Keep this weirdo with a cool armor in mind. His presence will make sense later on, along with the reasoning behind Coxcomb's assassination of Scooper. In any case, you figure out the mystery of the guide's death, and thus, your faction leader agrees to set up a meeting between you and Shaman in some hidden burrow in the swamps. There, you meet the man himself, dolled up in mystical decorations and speaking in a continuous stream of poetic words. The man likes to live up to his name. He tells you about the Trailblazers, the first people to ever enter the zone. This guy has them in a pretty high standard. He thinks of them as semi-religious figures, having left their testaments in the zone and having set the standard for what a good relationship with it is. Of course, until it got filled with stalkers, bandits, mercs, and degenerates. He thinks that the Blessed are related to the Trailblazers in some way, that the Trailblazers are calling them to the zone. For what reason? No idea just yet, but it all must be part of the Trailblazers' plan, right? Still, before you can meet your destiny among the Trailblazers and whatever grand plan of enlightenment they have for you and the Blessed, you have to infiltrate the Orderlies to try and stay a step ahead of them. The Orderlies being their direct enemies of the Blessed, a gang of genocidal Blessed haters which consider them to be dangerous and worth shooting on sight. You're a new face in the zone, so no one's certain that you're a Blessed just yet. So after a short chat with Linden, who is associated with Shaman, he tells you about a nearby recruiter named Jaundice, who turns out to be the same guy who had Coxcomb kill Scooper. Coxcomb was probably about to be recruited to the Orderlies, and got killed in order to avoid him spilling the beans on their assassination of such an important stalker. Either way, you tell him you want in, and so he gives you 2 tasks. Interrogate a stalker in your faction's base in the next map, the roadside, just to be sure he's a Blessed before they kill him, and to meet up with an Orderly in order to help him kill another Blessed who has been kidnapped by the opposing faction. You have to kill his captors, then kill him. Of course, you can let him go if you're merciful. After jumping through hoops for a while, you're finally invited to the Orderly's base in Roadside. They have one last test for you. Jaundice tells you to kill the one last Blessed right in front of him, just as a proof of loyalty. Turns out, it's Linden, the guy who tutorialed you. He tells you that he wants to live. He wants out of here. Will you help him and make shit harder on yourself, or kill him and keep the charade up? This is among the earliest splitting points in the story. Killing Jaundice and the Orderlies will make the early stages harder, since now the jig is up and camps of patrolling Orderlies will open fire on sight. Not to mention that fighting yourself out of the situation will probably require some resilience on your side. Linden will surely be grateful to you though, if you see him again, that is. Once that matter is settled, Shaman recommends for you to look for a stalker named Oracle. His location is unknown to you. It's known that he, and the group around him, visit a gang of scrappers in a scrapyard. Their leader, one named Junkman, tells you the location of Oracle's group in exchange for a couple of junk items to fulfill a request. Interestingly, he asks this of you because his greatest squad of scrap hunters, composed entirely of Blessed stalkers, had recently been killed by Orderlies. With Junkman pleased, you finally get to meet Oracle, or rather his older brother, Condor. They seem to be a faction all on their own, only minding themselves, a tightly knit little group of nomads. Condor doesn't trust you to talk to Oracle, extremely protective of his brother. He sends you out on a short fetch quest to recover the PDAs of a couple of disappeared members of the gang who went missing after trying to lead a group of mutants away from them. Night after night, mutants have been attacking them in increasing numbers everywhere they go. More alarmingly so, once you get to speak to Oracle, he will reveal to you that he is not only part of the Blessed, but one with special abilities, seemingly making psionic contact with a beast of the zone. He hoped he would be able to do so without repercussions. Instead, this creature has been able to use the psychic link between them as somewhat of a radar, sending out squads of mutants to kill them. This problem and 3 corpses are Oracle's fault. Stricken with grief, he agrees to help you, should you kill this psionic mutant. This is the first dungeon in STALCRAFT, and they're always extremely interesting to visit. These places are nowhere to be seen or found during regular gameplay, so you might believe that they're just in inaccessible parts of the overall region. However, these places are strange and almost dreamlike in their logic, design and presentation. It's hard to figure out whether you're still in the physical world or in some sort of parallel dimension. This particular pocket belonging to a pseudo dog, a mutated canine with psionic abilities. Finding him atop a tower, you eliminate him and return to meet with Oracle, only he's not there. The search is on. You have to find Oracle if you want a chance at ever figuring out the mystery behind the blue sphere. Luckily for you, he's not too far from camp. He's not in any danger, mind you. Rather, he's having a bit of a crisis, thinking that he has sent you to an untimely death. The thought of you dying on his behalf is one corpse too much for his conscience to bear, so much so that even once you appear before him, he is still set on abandoning his brother's group. Looking to become his own man, another split in the storyline occurs here, as you can choose to either encourage him to leave and make his own path in life, or to remain with the family of brothers that he has been given. Either way, he will give you a piece of advice regarding your status as a blessed, before letting you know of a strange wave of psionic signals coming from the nearby sides of the zone. Saying goodbye one last time, you set off to find the source of this signal.
Блаженные отличаются от простых людей. Что-то проникает в наше сознание. Оно дает тебе новые силы, но оно же пытается подчинить тебя своей воле. Обычный человек видит свет, когда его глаза открыты. Когда же он закрывает свои глаза, все вокруг покрывает тьма. Но когда блаженный закрывает глаза, мир для него не погружается во тьму. Нет. Он видит слабый, словно призрачный свет. Сначала он кажется таким далеким, таким слабым, но потом он становится все сильней. Он начинает сводить с ума. Завладевает тобой и твоим сознанием, и ты уже не в силах понять, когда твои глаза открыты, а когда нет. Это гибельный путь. Ты должен избегать его. Ты должен разделять свет и тьму. Иначе ты сойдешь с ума, и этот свет поглотит тебя.
Heading to your faction's outskirts, the source of the signal can be traced to a poorly maintained industrial basement. Caved in just about everywhere and covered in trash, you might think that we're about to meet yet another psionic creature, but rather we meet Dr. Solyanikov.
Нет, нет. Нет, нет и нет. Прочь отсюда, шушера сталкерская. Здесь для тебя ничего интересного нет. Никаких артефактов. Ничего. Вон, за порог.
This guy is way too big of an asshole for someone without guns or armor. Still, a short conversation with him lets you in on the fact that he's also a blessed, and one that wasn't doing too bad in the outside world before being brought here. A fact that I neglected to mention earlier is that being a blessed isn't exactly an eldritch dream that just bothers you. It's an active hypnotic gesture being sent out by the blue sphere, which is to say, you could be just about anyone, in any part of the world, and its psionic abilities would force you to come to the zone. Not only that, but it will keep you within forcefully. Trying to leave the map bounds will start rapidly draining your health, the blue sphere's influence forcing you to stay here. Not one to do a glowing rock's bidding, Solyanikov tells you that he's working on developing something akin to a transmission jammer. A device with a counterforce so potent to the blue sphere's influence that it might, effectively, let him force his way out of the zone unharmed. However, he's yet to find a transmitter with enough strength. In his friendliest gesture yet, he asks you to go find such a device. Instead, you end up meeting with another weirdo of the zone.
Когда змей отдыхает, неразумно к нему приставать.
Ka, named like the snake in the Jungle Book, he speaks in riddles and poetry and long hissing that gets on my nerves. He's amongst the most blessed of the blessed. By this I mean that his status has fucked him up mentally. Text descriptions describe him as foul-smelling and closer to a corpse than an actual person. Not only that, he takes his Ka shtick seriously enough that, rather than just give you the fucking transmitter, he tells you to solve his riddles 3. Extremely obscure poems that will lead you throughout the explored areas. The last one bringing you to a lake near the bar. Wandering around a little, you'll meet yet another underwater anomaly. Interesting tidbit. On the bandit side of the poems, you are taken to a village in the roadside. In the Stalker games, this is the rookie village, the riddle taking you to where Sidorovich's bunker would be. Speaking of him as a greedy fuck, of course. This means that Sidorovich existed in STALCRAFT at some point, along with the rookie village. Their fate doesn't seem too good, however. Turns out, the last riddle was a portal to Ka's secret hideout. Not only that, this fucking asshole had the receiver with him the entire time. A really fucked up looking alien thing of an artifact, it's whatever. At least you finally have it. Time to head back to meet Solyanikov. he's gone. No note, no nothing.
Ладно, хватит вам слушать мое нытье.
Just in time to keep you occupied, Shaman hits you and tells you to head to the bar, so you do. In a fight, the orderlies would easily wipe out the Blessed. It's just a matter of when they decide to do it. So you must strike first. In the wild territories near the bar, there's going to be a deal between them and their unknown allies. Go there, find out where they're getting their help from, fuck the deal up, and come back in time for a blowjob and a glass of milk. Easy work. Also, by this point the protagonist is getting fucking sick of the M4's iron sights, so he buys a red dot sight. You meet up with a bandit affiliated Blessed, who will give you shit if you're a stalker. Under the flag of the Blessed, however, people from all walks of life unite, so you can trust him not to shoot you the moment you turn around. Especially since while the fight is happening, he will be preoccupied with trying to grab a hostage to interrogate later. So just let loose and fuck them up.
Вы просите слишком много. Полковник Власов уже выделил вам вертолет. И все это для борьбы с кучкой...
И вы, не полковник Власов, не имеете настоящего понимания, насколько опасны эти блаженные. Без вашей поддержки нам не удастся сдержать их.
Вы что думаете, присажались к армейским запасам, и мы вам теперь все, что попросите, дадим? Дали вертолет. Дальше что? Танки, беспилотники, красную кнопку в чемоданчике не подогнать?
Стоп! Тут что-то не так.
By the time the shootout is done, there's a bunch of militaries and orderlies dead. Turns out, the orderlies are getting direct support from the army, or rather, a colonel who has gone rogue in order to meddle in zone affairs. One so-called Blasov who is supplying the orderlies with equipment. Not only that, you now have a military to interrogate, and so you do. You can do pretty much anything to this guy. You can tase him, you can punch him, you can burn him, and you can shoot him. Just be careful not to fuck the interrogation up by doing too much to him.
Ну ты дал жару, а? Ты его вырубил. Не рассчитал селенок. Бывает.
Suddenly, as you're speaking with Shaman to report your findings, you notice that your next dialogue options mentions you passing out, and so you do, this time with a direct message from the Blue Sphere, or rather, its master himself.
Ты слышишь его зов. Ты не можешь ему сопротивляться. Ты призван. Кто может бороться с этой силой? Сдайся. Присоединись. По-хорошему. А иначе... я утоплю тебя в твоих же собственных кошмарах.
A nightmare. There's some weirdo in here who you can exchange words with him. But overall, this place is all you. A forced dream of psionic pain in which a chimera chases you through rusted pipes and destroyed Soviet-era facilities. You managed to wake up thanks to Oracle's earlier words of support, which let you know that this is an influence which can be resisted. Going back to Shaman, it turns out that the military's alliance with the Orderlies goes beyond just supplies. They're actually sending in soldiers to help the Orderlies accomplish their objectives. Mainly speaking, killing anyone who's a blessed, of course. Shaman and his people have little chance against an entire government branch, so they send you, their champion, out to go kill some soldiers and make sure a family goes to sleep crying tonight. So you do. Once you're done with that, You head back to Shaman and he tells you that it's not enough, so he sends you back out once more, this time telling you to kill a couple of their lieutenants, hoping the organizational chaos that ensues will be enough respite for you. So you do, again. Thankfully, this has the desired effect. The Alliance has to stop operations in order to reorganize themselves, which gives the Blessed the chance to strike back, if they had the numbers for it, that is. Blessed are still a minority in the zone, after all. However, the Orderly's alliance with the military might not be such a good idea on their part. The Orderlies are stalkers, which means that any attempt at hostilities against them could throw off the balance of power of the main factions. But the military? Everyone hates the military, especially when the soldiers are working off the books, so any consequences for direct attacks would be severely lessened. Shaman thinks this is a good chance to get some help from the main factions of the zone, which are Mercenaries, a faction made up top to bottom entirely of wealth-seeking soldiers of fortune. All of them are on the zone under contract from a larger, shadowy client who you have no real idea who they are, but the main bossman of the mercenaries seems to be his leading man during his operations in the zone. Mercenaries aren't well regarded by anyone, since they're prone to violence and they're in this for nothing but themselves and their profit, which makes them extremely individualistic and not too trustworthy, not in a firefight and not anywhere else. Covenant, an original faction which seems to have borrowed from the original game's cut faction, Sin. The Covenant is a new branch of Orthodox Christianity established by their leader, Metropolite. They see the zone as God's punishment to humanity due to their wanton debauchery and abuse of modern civilization. Each member is a fierce zealot of their special brand of faith, some of them going to extreme lengths to show off their fierce belief in God and Metropolite. They might take vows of hand-to-hand combat, or vows of hunger. People regard them as crazy, unhinged cultists, and Metropolite is rumored to be a bit of an alcoholic. Rise, formerly known as Freedom. Rise is a faction of anarchists, adrenaline junkies and pleasure seekers. Their only real politic during their stay in the zone is the idea that the zone shouldn't be researched or destroyed. Rather, people should try to learn and coexist with it. They are commonly seen as drug addicts and mutant fuckers. However, not because they respect the lives of mutants, mind you, but because of a certain meme which popularized the idea that freedomers fuck bloodsuckers, or ghouls as they are called now. Frontier, formerly known as Duty. Frontier is a paramilitary organization which is mainly composed of ex-military and people with such a background. Disciplined and about as close as you'll get to an actual army with a chain of command within the zone, their mission statement is to contain and eventually destroy the zone. Seeing it as nothing but a source of destruction and chaos, they have close ties with the country's government, which makes them extremely well equipped and grants them a certain level of leeway. Commonly seen as fascists, sticks in the mud, and overall boring people to be around. These factions are the largest key players within the zone's politics, and they all hate each other, so asking for help from one of them will inevitably make the others lose interest. This will be your first foray into the late game stakes. Once you make your choice, it's time to grease them up. Depending on the faction and what exactly their gimmick is, the thing that they actually do to help you will vary. However, the quest itself is pretty much the same. A few stalkers of the faction you talk to have gone missing, and for one reason or another, you must go find them. In the process, finding yourself face to face with a bloodsucker named Bagant, due to the fact that his constant howling sounds like singing. So maybe Bard or Troubadour would have been a better translation for this one. It seems like the Orderlies beat you to the punch with this place. They've been here before, even if the ones that remain haven't been alive for a while now. A small tidbit of information is revealed. This creature has been modified artificially, somewhere, somehow. There's still an active, advanced, and equipped laboratory in the zone. Still, that's not a problem for you to worry about just yet. Kill the Vagant, come back home, and for your issues you'll get a cool, faction-themed M14, in honor of this newfound friendship. The Freedom M14 says Boar. That, along with some off-screen gesture in order to help you getting to the military base. Depending on the faction, what they do varies, but it's still an off-screen gesture, so it's just text. Duty will help you by pulling out some soldiers using their connections, and Freedom will detonate an explosion, so on and so forth. After a short walk around their halls, and a conversation that seems to imply the Colonel's beef with the Blessed comes from a personal place, it's time for a good old-fashioned shootout. Should you be curious enough to look around Blasov's office before chasing after him, you will come across a document in which he states his feelings towards the Blessed. His hatred for them coming from the fact that his grandson had become a stalker recently, only to end up killed with no real provocation by a Blessed who had gone insane, thus starting his vendetta against this group of the Zone. With Blasov dead, and the orderlies having been dealt a massive blow to their supplies and numbers, Shaman receives you with open arms and a sweet new pistol for you to hold on to. Not only that, they've gotten a hold of Oracle while you were out and about, and he somehow managed to use the receiver artifact to determine the Blue Sphere's location. We're getting close, my friend. Put on your boots and go find him.
Нужно сконцентрироваться. Я уже знаю, как это делать. Я отыщу этот предмет. Наш путь подходит к концу. Я вижу это. Я вижу его. Шар.
Что это? Я ведь уже разглядел. Еще чуть-чуть. Я укажу тебе. Я видел его. Я знаю, где он. Я видел его. Видел!
Oh, come the fuck on. You're shot and left to die. Oracle got kidnapped by the orderlies and taken away. Luckily for you, Condor finds you and helps you recover. Turns out that regardless of what you tell the kid, Condor will still follow after him. They're bros after all, so he wants to keep tabs on him and make sure he's fine. I'm sure you can tell who we're going to speak to now.
Ты понимаешь, что отдал врагу ключ к нашему предназначению? Эти безумцы, инициаторы настоящего геноцида, могут заполучить невероятную мощь. Им остается только руку протянуть. Ты подарил им эту победу. Ты проявил слабость в тот миг, когда должен был быть сильнее всех.
Shaman is crestfallen at this news. We were so close. All that fucking kid had to do was speak fast. And now we're without an answer just because he wanted to speak dramatically? We're too close to stop now. There's an orderly deserter not too far from the bar. He's our ticket into their de facto headquarters. Meet up with him, get a way in, and break out Oracle no matter what the stakes are. The deserter is a stalker named I. He and Morg, the orderly's leader, used to be tight, but Morg's ambition are making him do shit that I really doesn't want to be a part of. In exchange for safe passage out the zone, he lets you in on the fact that there's a massive recruiting effort on the side of the orderlies, mainly to send expeditionary forces into the northern unexplored parts of the zone. This, along with a secret password for the gate's guard, is all you need to be let in, and so your efforts to slowly make your way towards Oracle's cell begins. In the process, you'll be jumping through hoops and lying out your ass the entire time, fixing radios, pretending to have eaten bad meat, forging signatures, pretending to be some dude from Russia, all of this with the final objective of reaching the cell in which Oracle is being kept. And if you were a bold type of stalker, next to him you'll find Linden. Having been captured after fucking around for a while, you can easily let him out. Though the only reward he'll give you is some help escaping the place, heavily reducing the number of NPCs you have to go through. His dialogue also implies that this might be where he actually dies, though I'm not too sure. Either way, Oracle lets you know that during his stay as a prisoner, he's been used by Morg, along with the receiver artifact, in order to manufacture a psi protection device that should let you wander into the radar unscathed. The radar being the name of an unexplored, blocked off region of the zone, with the objective of turning off the Duga complex and its psionic properties, which keep the place inaccessible to regular stalkers. The Blue Sphere is within that very complex. Quick something. This is probably starting to sound very familiar to those of you who have played the Stalker games. For those who haven't, let me fill you in. In Shadow of Chernobyl, the chronologically second game in the series, Mark the One is trying to head up to the north to find the Wish Granter, also known as the Monolith. However, in the area, also named Radar, there's a psionic emitter which you must also disable after also preparing a psionic protection device. This is interesting because the dialogue in STALCRAFT implies that at one point not only was the psionic emitter in Radar turned off before being turned back on by the antagonists, but you can also find notes in here which state that Murmur, this game's equivalent of Monolith, also had a Monolith of their own, which got destroyed. The fact that the emitter had been turned off before and Murmur lost their version of the Monolith makes me think that within the universe of STALCRAFT, events extremely similar to those in the mainline games happened. It wouldn't surprise me if STALCRAFT had its own lore equivalents of Scar, Strelok, and Dektiarev. Before doing anything about it, however, you must escape. Oracle's cell is locked, and you don't have time to free him without being captured. You must leave him behind. So after threatening a pilot to take you away, and having a short encounter with Morg, who gives you the typical "oh no, wait, I'm actually the good guy" type spiel, a blowout takes your helicopter down, and you're left to wander through the Red Forest for a good while. Does fucking anything go right in this fucking game?
От судьбы сбежать невозможно. Кто-то владеет силой, а кто-то вынужден подчиниться.
Всегда находится безумец, стоящий на пути урагана. Ты считаешь, оно того стоит?
В тот самый последний момент, когда этот ураган будет разрывать тебя на куски, задумайся, не проще ли было преклонить колени?
You've lost all your gear, armor, weapons, all that shit. Now you must do mad dashes through the forest to avoid patrolling orderlies who want to shoot you down with extreme prejudice. In the process, you'll come across these typhoon-looking things, portals of some sort, which take you to what I can only describe as some sort of nightmare dimension, not too dissimilar from the one you've seen in your dreams, revealing a warped, violently distorted version of the zone. Not only that, this place seems to be influenced by someone who's directly trying to work against you. Signs and guiding arrows leading you towards dead ends, if not lethal anomalies. It's hard to figure out what here is a dream and what is reality, especially considering that once you manage to escape the orderlies and make it back to the charted zone, it's because you're waking up in the arms of Condor, who, once again, is pissed at you because his brother is still captured. After a couple of words, it's back to Shaman, who in this occasion is not too far from where you wake up. In your absence, he has taken a bunch of bless to fight against the orderlies, and when you find him, it seems they had a successful skirmish. However, he, along with only 2 stalkers, survived. You tell him about the device, and he tells you that with that, along with a secret route that he's aware of, you might have a shot at it on your own, since with only a single device, it's not like you can bring friends, even if reluctantly you agree and head towards the place. Beneath a house, and after a couple of meters of dirt tunnels, you come across a massive, sprawling complex of tunnels and driveways. Nostalgic stalkers might recognize these ambiances, since these very complexes, caved in and cut off as they are, used to be home to the bases of Rise and Covenant, before the massive emission that brought on the New North, and leaving the old ones abandoned. This place is massive, and the efforts made by diggers is pretty impressive. Not so impressive is the fact that it's a death trap filled with mutants, anomalies, and the diggers themselves. Psionic emissions pouring in and cooking their brains. Now they're but zombies guarding the place. Nothing some lead pills can't fix as you make your way towards the radar. The radar. This place is absolutely fucked. At one point, the psionic emitter was turned off, period during which the military made their presence here. Rows and rows of tents and equipment, they had a massive operation going on, which means that there's now a massive amount of zombies with military gear here. Not just that, but zombies from all walks of life. Bandits, stalkers, scientists, doesn't really matter. This place is teeming with pretty much anything that could kill you in the zone. Lucky for you, you're the protagonist, so nothing stops you on your way to the control room. A single press of the button, and the Duga complex is off once more. Exploration can resume. Not for you, however. The first person you meet the moment you step out of the room is an orderly. He doesn't seem too aggressive though, and under threat of Oracle being hurt, you're told to walk a few meters away to meet Morg in person, to have a one-on-one conversation about all that's happened thus far. A conversation is had, during which he lets you in on the game's final revelation. Remember the Trailblazers? The guys who were mentioned on the game's opening cutscene? The first people to explore the zone and shaman's idols? Turns out, they're real, and Morg was one of them. The Trailblazers were in fact a group of scientists from all around the world, along with a team of mercenaries in order to keep them independent from any type of government. Along the scientists, there was one named Nyas, also sometimes translated as Prince, who, when they found the blue sphere, determined that it was a synthetic artifact created before the Trailblazers' arrival by an unknown entity. Nyas wanted to use it as a tool to create an army with which to take over the zone, which explains why Morg went around killing Blessed all willy-nilly. They probably end up as agents for Nyas's influence otherwise. Increasingly paranoid, it can be assumed that he activated the Cyameters in radar once again, not before a retrieval mission during which Morg found and unwittingly activated the artifact. Nyas shot him through the chest, however, the artifact's influence kept him alive. The blue sphere's properties being those of manipulating humans not only into servitude but into resilience and adaptation, making them stronger and far more resistant to any of the zone's dangers, including getting shot in the face. Oracle believes him and is crestfallen to know that it was all just the work of a madman using a brainwashing tool. He seems solemn and is not too clear on whether the two of you will ever meet again. After bidding him farewell, you enter the underground complex in Radar, where not only is the Blue Sphere, but also Nyas, along with the remainders of the Trailblazers, dolled up in extremely potent gear, along with a pseudo-giant with a bunch of sci-fi shit stapled on him. It's safe to assume that all the superpowered, strange mutants you've found thus far might be part of Nyas's manipulation of the zone. Working your way down the complex, killing Trailblazers and reading notes, you find out that the original group is pretty much splintered. Whoever wasn't killed or mind-controlled is now scattered and disappeared throughout the zone, particularly one token named Pathfinder, who is mentioned again and again. He was the expedition's guide who deserted after one too many tall orders. Eventually, you make it to the room where Nyas is hiding, along with the coveted artifact. This is your first face-to-face meeting with the Blocky Man.
Никчемный холоп! Как ты смеешь врываться сюда? Как смеешь мешать моим планам? Да кем ты себя возомнил? О, какая проницательность! Позволь я блесну своей. Ты просто жалкое сталкерское отродье, пожиратель мусора, мелкий воришка артефактов, пытающийся нажиться на великой сокровищнице зоны, которая на самом деле тебе не принадлежит. Если человечество хочет развития, оно должно приносить жертвы. Нельзя приручить огонь, не устроив пожар. Нельзя подчинить энергию атома и осознать ее мощь без Хиросимы и Нагасаки. Без этой зоны, также отчасти созданной благодаря атому. Тот, кому уготовано место на жертвенном алтаре, никогда не поймет того, кто заносит над ним кинжал. Довольно! Я больше не намерен терпеть тебя, несносный гаденыш.
Right before you can put a slug between his eyes, Morg's team breaks in, giving Nyas enough of a distraction to run away. But then, oh shit, Shaman's team shows up. There's no way this won't end without bloodshed. This is the last splitting point in the story. At this point, you've been a blessed yourself. You've seen the type of wanton murder, the type of fear, and the type of suffering that Morg and his people have created throughout the zone against people who have done nothing, but who might as well have been literal junglings who were playing Dragon Ball Sparking Zero and eating lunch leaves before the Blue Sphere's influence forced them to come here. On the other hand, you've seen just how dangerous the Blessed could be. They are prone to psychotic breaks and random acts of violence against even their friends. Psionically susceptible to controlling influences, they are ticking time bombs, sleeper agents who could, at any point, start shooting up one of the main neutral areas of the zone. Whatever you choose, violence breaks out pretty much immediately. Either someone will run in and throw a flashbang, or someone will get a little stupid with their grenade launcher. What follows is a final boss battle against either Shaman or Morg, and while both depend on your gear regarding difficulty, I'd call Morg's boss fight remarkably harder, constantly taking shots from him and his crew on a ledge while you try to shoot back every so often. Of course, no one is immune to lead pills.
Это конец.
Should you choose to fight Shaman, however, I'd say the fight's a lot easier. If cooler, Shaman somehow immediately knows how to use the Blue Sphere, grabbing it and activating it to impressive effects, summoning rows after rows of anomalous mutants to attack you and throwing lasers at you in a cool light show. Was Shaman always this in tune with the Blue Sphere, or is the Blue Sphere acting out in order to protect itself? Either way, gun beats magic.
Все кончено.
By the time the fight's over and the dust settles, Nias is gone, a major player in the zone is dead, and the Blue Sphere is contained or destroyed. Should Morg win this encounter, he'll consider his business in the zone completed. Free from the Blue Sphere's influence, he abandons the zone. Even with the Blue Sphere gone, its remaining influence continues to draw people in, but in much lesser numbers and with severely lessened negative effects. You can choose to hit its goal, of course, or you can choose not to. Some of the more psionically gifted people don't seem to be doing too good, however. Should Shaman win, he'll keep the artifact. The Trailblazers were his idols, but now he knows that they were fucking assholes in the end. He's the Blue Sphere's new master, and hopefully he won't make the same mistakes. Among his first actions is to lessen the Blue Sphere's influence, which means that there will be far less Blessed coming into the zone. Without a megalomaniacal master giving them nightmares and trying to control them, Blessed becomes simply part of the rabble, peacefully dispersing into the general population of the zone. Nias is still alive, however, and the guy's a real piece of work. Chances are that if given the chance, he'll be back, and he'll probably want to kill you, so you might want to keep him in mind. And so that's the end of STALCRAFT's main storyline. Of course, there's a shit ton of secondary quests and shit to do. However, this is as far as the story of our protagonist goes. That is, until the New Norse faction wars begin.
Alright. Let's see what else we got here. Wonder if he's got any more videos.
Blah blah blah, Stalker.
No, I think that's the same one. Oh no.
Not too long ago, the Black
This
Market
is-
Battle Pass has been out for a while now, and after the Civcast Battle Pass, which came along with the StarCraft X overhaul, gear, or
Let me
otherwise cool shit every 50
that's
levels,
not anything. Or maybe, I don't know. Here, I'll just throw it up. Where did I put it? Okay. I wonder how long this fucking maintenance is supposed to be going for. It's not on the... I'm like looking all over the place. I can't find... Maybe I'll look on Steam again. I don't know. What a shame. I had shit I wanted to do. Yeah, let's watch this. Let's watch this one.
the Black Market Battle Pass has been out for a while now, and after the Civcast Battle Pass, which came along with the StarCraft X overhaul, gear, or otherwise cool shit every 50 levels, the QBC as a final weapon, and a whole host of things like the movement update, overhaul of the map, and all that shit, the Black Market Battle Pass has some pretty big shoes to fill. Does it manage it? The Black Market Battle Pass. I'll save my complaints for the end though. Let's get right into the tips so you can get back to it ASAP. For starters, make a buy tab, don't get tilted, drop useless shit like claws, 4-balls, and pretty much anything that is too large or too heavy for its selling value. All that shit, you know. When it comes to the most reliable, low-risk source of points farming, for bandits that's Dead City, and for stalkers, it's the Graveyard. These areas are relatively small, with a high density of world events, and relative closeness to the bar. The Graveyard is like a full minute longer to get to, however, which kinda sucks if you ask me. Both of these places have a higher capsule drop rate than their previous equivalent, the Pit and the Forest, and are relatively safer than their next equivalent, Path of Fools and Polskoye, which while with a higher capsule drop rate, Quests are definitely a lot more spread out, and there's a higher chance to come across PvP marauders. With the new update, even if you're part of a sub-faction, you no longer have to worry about your same faction enemies in the southern parts of the map. So farm away knowing that the high population density from your own side will keep you safe for the most part. If you farm up to 120 capsules in either of these places, you'll have 3 whole levels in your inventory. The amount of quests done probably accounting for 2 levels. That's 5 whole levels each 120 capsules. You could do 240 and get 10 levels, or just go insane and go for 400 capsules and get 10 levels right away. Keep in mind that this will be extremely boring, so bring a podcast or a video or a long fucking video essay or some shit. The next sources of farming are the Labyrinth and the Forge. I describe both as mid-level risk in the northern parts of the zone. The Forge is this huge map right at the middle which needs high side protection to enter, so pills, a suit, or you could travel the long route through your main PvP map. The Forge has a higher capsule drop rate, but quests are extremely spread out. It's also dangerous since people come here expecting PvP, so unless you're lucky and have no one taking quests alongside you and no people looking for PvP near you, it's usually not worth it. Labyrinth is also problematic for its own reasons. You can get capsules here, but this place is a lot more effective for straight up ruble farming. There's a shit ton of anomalous powder quests, from aiding scientists for a single wave, which is pretty fast, proto clusters, protecting the signal generator thing, with the odd NPC camp every now and then. You can get a shit ton of auction sellables and an even bigger shit ton of gamma fragments, which only take like 100 to weigh like 15 kilos. Each one can be sold for 900 rubles too. So what, are you going to ignore these for capsules? 90k each 100 fragments? Don't be wasteful, bro. There's PvP here too, but it's more of an oddity, since this map is pretty fucked up geographically and there's a side for each faction. In the end, what I'm saying is that before you can get any meaningful capsule farming done, you probably have a small fortune of sellables. Try this place if you don't care about money and have a cold heart for picking up resources and anomalous dust and sellable proto artifacts. Also, you're gonna need a pretty high tier scientific suit if you want to last even 10 seconds here. The anomalous properties in this place are through the fucking roof. And then there's the evil, edgy farming option. The place where farming points is easiest, most rewarding, and most valuable in a time to capsule conversion rate. Stillwater, also known as Saton. This place, along with Limansk or Lyubesh, are the last remainders of STALCRAFT's Old North. They're dangerous as fuck. You can kill dudes from your own faction and they can kill you. The NPC monolith zombies can fuck you up pretty easily, and mutants are at their toughest. All of this risk is then compensated by this being the hands down best map with the highest drop rates for sellable items, high tier artifacts, crafting resources, and of course, capsule points. After just 4 world quests, you can easily find yourself with 40 capsules already. That's a whole level for those of you at home. And if you do high risk shit, like more outposts, bases, and killing bloodsuckers, you could go in and out with 100.
I could be doing that shit right now.
10 minutes. Of course, keep in mind that unless you're some kind of pro with some pistol, or you get lucky with the player density, chances are you'll die, which is why this is the dangerous evil option. Statistically speaking, you will die more often than not, so keep that in mind. Maybe form a capsule farming hyper death squad to keep you company. Oh, and there's also the
Error.
shit.
Okay,
Weeklies,
maybe
challenges.
Oh,
No challenges. Dailies. And the Explorer's bonus, which gives you 350 points. Yeah, Expo nerfed it fairly recently. I'm not the type to complain about shit like this usually, but this change just fucking baffles me in how exactly this is anything other than a desperate attempt at getting more people to buy levels. The season pass has 500 fucking levels and you have like what, 90 days to complete it or something like that? The Explorer's bonus brought flexibility to just how you tackle this shit. Not to mention that this iteration of the battle pass has less shit than the previous one, in terms of content and in terms of number of items that you get. They say that it's because the last battle pass was supposed to be a celebration of 10 years of STALCRAFT, and I might be inclined to believe them, but nerfing the Explorer's bonus from a neat 500 points to 350 points, on that I call fucking bullshit. Plus the season pass screen looks ugly as fuck. Put a drawing or something behind this dude, please. Time for a quick gacha roll to cool my nerves. Why would anyone want to do this shit in the first place? Alright, there's the customer skin, which makes you look like a Counter-Strike Next on Zombies terrorist, a shovel that is statistically worse than a lot of things, but it's a cool shovel, a 10mm pistol along with a lore-relevant skin for those so inclined, the Phantom Hunter armor along with a skin, which, while not all that powerful, is still pretty badass and worth having on the looks alone, the SMG nut along with a skin from last year's Christmas event, and lastly, you have the last prize, the crowning jewel of the Black Market Battle Pass, the OTS 14M Search, or just Search, a bullpup style rifle which, while not all too customizable, only having space for a sight and a grip or a laser, it's still pretty statistically potent. It beats the fully upgraded QBZ by 2 damage points and works better at range by like a meter or 2. What else has happened? Like, the Persevet armor got a visual update for the Covenant, which is kinda cool. It even got this cute little animated trailer. There's been a lot of quality of life updates too, which is badass as fuck. Sorry to all the veterans who have been playing since 2022 or earlier, having to sell all their shit manually, dragging and clicking your items, rather than just having the move junk button. Now if only there was a move craftables button. I'm not gonna make any assumptions about Expo. I say this because with this battle pass's lack of content compared to the last two, and this ugly black screen that greets me every time I open it, this one feels kinda rushed, or like it lacks polish. The constant nerfs to rewards and shit definitely don't help. So much so, I've neglected actually completing the battle pass for this video. And to that you might say, oh, but mediocre, if you haven't completed the battle pass, how can you be so sure this video is accurate? And to that I say, shut up, stupid.
I don't know. Let me, I gotta try to get the game going again. Oh yeah, I had to look on Steam. What is this? Oh, I wanted to go somewhere first. Alright.
Welcome to the Zone. In today's episode, we'll be discussing the history of the Chernobyl exclusion zone, the disaster that led to its existence, and the adventures that take place within it. This is a long and rich story, one that is decades in the making, and one that is dear to my heart. Before we begin, I would just like to issue a small spoiler warning. This video contains many spoilers for the Stalker series, and if you haven't already played the games yourself, I would encourage you to do so. Also, if you enjoy the content, feel free to like and subscribe for more Stalker-themed content. If you haven't checked out my real-life stalking videos, the links are in the description below. Without further ado, let's get started. Pre-emission history. Our story begins in the 1960s with the Soviet-controlled Institute of Crop Selection and Genetics. Officially, this government agency's role was to perfect crop selection programs and increase food production throughout the Soviet Union. The institute was not unlike the United States FDA, constantly doing research on nutrition, crop yields, and food distribution. Unofficially, the story is much different, though. Unbeknownst to the public, the institute was created to research what is known as consciousness control. Over the years, moderate success was reached when researchers began to insert simple commands into the minds of wild animals. This research continued for years, and due to the promise that it showed, it received expanded funding and increased personnel that was assigned to the institute. In 1981, the project had become so large that it required a facility to continue operating at full efficiency. Farmsteads and a large factory were constructed, new infrastructure was installed, and hidden from the public eye. The building blocks of a Lab X-18 were laid underneath the factory, deep in the earth. As the facility was being built and the project proceeding ahead as scheduled, an unplanned disaster almost destroyed the project forever. In 1986, the V.I. Lenin nuclear power station, a large nuclear reactor located near Chernobyl, sent out an alert. The power plant was experiencing a massive power surge in reactor number 4, and all attempts at an emergency shutdown were futile. The technicians in reactor 4 bravely attempted to stop the surge, but their struggle was in vain. Steam explosions began to cause the reactor to catch fire, destroying the facility and sending a cloud of radioactive fallout into the atmosphere. Chernobyl and the nearby village of Pripyat were evacuated. The radioactive cloud drifted over most of Western Russia as well as parts of Eastern European countries. Following the disaster, the residents located within 400 kilometers were permanently relocated and the Chernobyl exclusion zone was created. After the government ensured that civilian activity was minimal in the exclusion zone, a Soviet group of workers nicknamed the Liquidators were brought into the zone. The liquidators were used to quickly construct a temporary containment shelter around the remains of Reactor 4 in an attempt to contain excess radiation from leaking into the zone.
Okay.
The workers called this massive concrete and steel construction
It's just
the
a
sarcophagus. Toward the end of 1986, the construction of Lab X-18 is halted, and the Institute of Crop Selection and Genetics is shut down. This shutdown would not last long, however, as reports of odd entities and anomalies began to trickle into the Soviet government. The radiation that saturated the exclusion zone was producing unforeseen changes to the environment. In 1987, the Soviet government re-established the old Institute of Crop Selection and Genetics as the newly minted Agroprom Research Institute. The institute begins to treat irradiated soil in the hopes that someday the exclusion zone will become habitable again. In 1989, a small team of scientists known as the Group take interest in the exclusion zone due to its low population and remoteness. They began to experiment with a newly found energy field called the noosphere, which would allow the scientists to alter human consciousness. The group set up a secret research operation within the heart of the zone, utilizing many antennas and the remains of the Chernobyl nuclear power plant. The Sea Consciousness Project is born, and 7 scientists continue their clandestine research, culminating in the 7 forming a collective consciousness. The group is unable to foresee the consequences of creating such a consciousness until it was too late. The tear in the noosphere caused the area around the NPP to become unstable. The group worked tirelessly to maintain their control of the area. On December 26, 1991, the Soviet Union collapses. Many small republics break away from the USSR, and with the help of their new NATO allies, declare independence. Most Soviet operations in these new states are ceased, and several research laboratories in the zones fail due to losing Soviet government funding. The group and other former Soviet researchers in the zone are not willing to leave or stop their research, and the newly formed Ukrainian government is unable to forcibly remove the scientists. 2001, strange phenomena reported. In the decade after the fall of the Soviet Union, the zone became a center of attraction and wonder. Reports of strange phenomena close to the Chernobyl nuclear power plant spread through the ex-Soviet Union. More and more civilians began to come and tour the zone for brief periods of time, but after a bus of tourists exploring Pripyat vanishes without a trace, the Ukrainian government restricts access to the zone completely. During this time, the Agroprom Research Institute begins to work with the group on the Sea Consciousness Project. In 2005, changes are felt in the zone. Many experience symptoms of paranoia. The weather begins to change and earthquakes are felt in localized small tremors. Hurricane winds are observed for the first time in the zone. 2006, emission. On March 4, 2006, a blinding light is seen for miles around the zone, high above the old Chernobyl nuclear power plant. For 2 hours, the light creates a small sun that bathes the area in blinding light.
I'm gonna do my little maintenance
Onlookers
thing
who stare at
here.
the light for too long are blinded. The light
I
suddenly
just watch
disappears.
videos.
Reports state
I'm
that
gonna
the
make
lights seem
this
to go off
smaller.
almost like a light bulb is turned off, or like an electrical device loses power. On April 12th, the light returns.
And then I'll just
The clouds around the light begin to
game.
disappear as they are evaporated. After a few moments of light and silence, a crash sounding like thunder is
Oh,
heard for
no.
minutes,
Hold on.
much longer than any natural thunder.
Yeah.
Again, once the sound disappears, there is silence.
Okay.
The ground begins to shake, and in Moscow, a 6.9 earthquake is detected. As
Nice.
the sky continued to glow,
Nice.
a rescue team was put into place by the Ukrainian
I guess I'll
government
just be
to
sitting
evacuate
here
personnel out of the zone.
Watching
The light continued
videos
and began to
about
bathe the zone in an unknown radiation,
Stalker because
halting
that's what I
rescue
feel
efforts
like.
and almost certainly killing all unprotected inhabitants. After the event, an investigation team reported that the center of the explosion was within 1 kilometer of the Chernobyl nuclear power plant. On June 10th, the zone grows almost 5 kilometers after what is called the second disaster. Physics-defying objects and events were reported by soldiers, API researchers, and those crazy enough to still live inside the zone. Eventually, reports of strange and mutated animals began to leak to the general public. Most military and research assets in the zone were killed. As the zone began to expand once more, civilians located in nearby villages are evacuated away from the expansion. A new zone is cordoned off in an attempt to keep civilians out. In response to the zone's unexpected expansion, the Ukrainian military begins to mobilize for a sortie into the very center of the zone. Their objective is to destroy the zone and the group was given permission to utilize nuclear weapons if necessary. Upon entering the zone, the task force soon realized that without the proper equipment for dealing with the lethal radiation levels, or without the means to evade the newly discovered physical anomalies, most of their unit were doomed to perish. Due to the lack of operable intelligence on the zone, many of the ground forces were killed before they reached their objective. The few of the task force that did make it to the center of the zone were almost instantly killed by another emission, much smaller than the first. The survivors of the emission were left scattered across the zone, with few supplies and no hope of rescue or support. In the wake of their task force's failure, they were left to fend for themselves in the harsh new environment. A squad leader named Captain Chenko sabotages all the radios and communication equipment in an attempt to keep his soldiers from leading more people into the zone on a rescue mission. Tachenko's squad decides to remain in the zone and dedicates their unit to fighting the evils of the zone and to keep it from expanding at all costs. The unit rebrands itself as Duty. 2007 to 2010. In the aftermath of the massive failure to contain the zone, scientists were unable to explain the zone's expansion or the increased anomalies. Scientists began to send expeditions into the zone, most of which ended in a complete failure. A few of the lucky teams sent into the zone to gather data returned talking of mutated animals, ghosts, zombies, and creatures with psychic abilities. In 2009, a group of scientists creates a device that can detect anomalies from 10 meters away, making traversing the zone much more possible. That winter, a group of researchers is sent with new protective equipment, and the new detectors into the zone is a field test. The group returned home without an incident. By 2010, expeditions began to become more commonplace. Artifacts are discovered by some anomalies and become highly sought after. Along with artifacts, the first blowouts are discovered. 2011. While the advancements of detector technology allowed for more expeditions into the zone, the Ukrainian State Security Service began to plan another military operation into the center of the Chernobyl exclusion zone. The goal of this operation was to take control of the Chernobyl nuclear power plant and to eliminate the source of anomalies and mutations occurring within the zone. Commander Zavaganstev was named the leader of the task force and led his men in an airborne parachute drop into the very center of the zone. Similar to the first military incursion, almost instantly, a sudden emission led to the death of almost the entire task force. The battered survivors led by Zavaganstev wandered the zone after their failed mission, and eventually found their way to a Duty outpost. The military personnel were absorbed into the Duty faction and began to fight the zone at all costs. Around the time of the second military incursion into the zone, leaked reports of people surviving in the zone leaked to the general population. Many people from all walks of life begin to venture into the zone, ranging from researchers to looters and adventurers. The government names these individuals as stalkers, as a catch-all term for those who enter the zone. Initially, the government ignores the stalkers, but after several contraband artifacts from the zone are found in civilian hands outside of the zone, they are forced to act. In early 2011, stalkers begin to report feral and almost zombie-like humans acting in the zone. One of the most chilling stories of these zombies comes from a lone stalker in Yantar, who encountered zombies who were speaking English to one another. This group was later confirmed to be the remnants of a tour group who were lost almost a decade earlier in the zone. On February 4th, the government begins to crack down on illegal stalking done by unsanctioned individuals. These illegal stalkers are targeted and arrested, and 10 stalker trading posts are raided. The operation results in over 70 arrests. In September, a team of stalkers disappear when they attempt to bypass the Brain Scorcher, a device that seemingly kills all who approach. The group soon reappears as a heavily armed and militarized group calling itself Monolith. The group became highly aggressive towards other stalkers and claimed that they were defending the zone, which they believed was a living entity. They also begin to spread rumors of a device called a Wish Granter, a device capable of rewriting reality to the user's will. Monolith members dig in at the Chernobyl nuclear power plant and claim it as their primary base of operations, hoarding weaponry and supplies in multiple surrounding caches. Around the same time that the Monolith faction rose to power, a small group of free stalkers named Strelick, Fang, and Ghost penetrate the Brain Scorcher using a hidden path without any side effects. Similar to the military's task force sent into the center of the zone, a massive emission is unleashed from the Chernobyl nuclear power plant. The resulting emission was so powerful that it changes the landscape of the zone forever. Stalkers soon find that paths that were once clear of hazardous anomalies are now filled with clusters of anomalous activity, forcing stalkers to reevaluate their routes. New anomalies are discovered, some becoming invisible to the naked eye. The resulting changes to the zone spark a bloody conflict between stalker factions, forcing the factions to fight for new territory and safe pathways. The emission also wipes out a large military presence at an army warehouse. The soldiers stationed there are killed almost instantly, leaving only 20 estimated survivors. The survivors that were unable to make contact with their superiors, which led the surviving soldiers to believe that they had been left for dead in the middle of the zone. Later in September of the same year, a group of stalkers called the Diggers discover a massive cache of radioactive material at a location known as the Garbage. News of this radioactive gold rush reaches far across the zone, causing many factions to make a play for the valuable resources located there. The Diggers begin to ambush anyone that attempts to claim what they consider to be their property. Soon after the Digger ambushes begin, bandits begin to move into the area and form a provisional and crude form of government. They begin to demand taxes from lone stalkers and other factions for passage and protection. Reports of stalkers and researchers being gang-pressed into the bandit service start to pass through the zone. Around this time, a small scout team of Freedom faction members is dispatched to look for a path to the abandoned army warehouse in an attempt to claim the equipment and weaponry for their expansion. While searching for the warehouses, the scout team hears rumors of a small town in the zone which was left almost unaffected by the changes to the local environment. Chekhov, the leader of the Freedom faction, sends a company-sized element of men to search for the rumored town. Later, it is revealed to Freedom leadership that Duty is also desperately searching for the town, and almost half of the Duty faction is working its way deep into the zone. September 10th, events in Clear Sky take place. A mercenary named Scar awakens from unconsciousness following the massive blowout. He is recruited by a faction called Clear Sky, and is tasked with hunting down the free stalkers who penetrated the Brain Scorcher. Strelok, Fang, and Ghost are determined to be threats to the zone. On October 25th, the Ukrainian government issues a shoot-on-sight order for anyone trespassing the military cordon, following a deadly firefight between a unit of stalkers and a military garrison. Around this time, Duty and Freedom both reach the secret town of Lemensk, leading to a massive battle over the town and its secrets. Shortly after the battle, it is reported that large groups of aggressive stalkers have been seen returning from the Brain Scorcher wearing monolith uniforms and brandishing their equipment. In early November, members of Clear Sky, along with their new agent Scar, begin to mobilize for another incursion into the heart of the zone in an attempt to find and neutralize Strelok. The operation, similar to any other recorded thus far, ends in a massive emission which destroys the entire Clear Sky task force. 2012. Events of Shadow of Chernobyl take place. On May 1st, an amnesiac stalker known as the Marked One awakes in a secure bunker. He is cared for by Sidrovich, a dealer and stalker outfitter of sorts. The Marked One wakes up to find out that all of his equipment is gone, save for his PDA, which only states, "Kill Strelok." The Marked One embarks on his mission. On May 12th, Captain Maximenko reaches the Agaprom Research Institute, discovering that it is a front for the clandestine organization known as the Group. Around this time, the Mark I later regains some of his memory, and it is revealed to him that he is Strelok. Strelok disables the Brain Scorcher and consequently opens up a new previously unexplored part of the zone for many stalkers. With the Brain Scorcher deactivated, the military begins to plan another incursion into the zone under the auspices of Operation Monolith, a massive military operation dedicated to reclaiming the zone and reinstituting law and order. May 20th, Strelok destroys the sea consciousness, and as a result, the Monolith faction is severely weakened. Hundreds of stalkers begin to break away from Monolith mental control and begin to wander the zone again. With the weakening of Monolith and the Brain Scorcher disabled, free stalkers begin to move into the zone. Beard and Grouse establish a base of operations in a beach ship near Xanton, bandits begin to flow into the area under the guidance of Sultan in order to keep the peace and extort protection taxes from lone stalkers. Soon after, a free stalker named Gary discovers a path around the Jupiter area, which leads to the establishment of another stalker settlement in Yanov Station. Shortly after the establishment of Yanov Station, a Freedom task force under the command of Loki is dispatched to scout the very center of the zone. They arrive near Yanov Station to find a detachment of duty agents under the command of Lieutenant Colonel Shulga. A battle ensues, resulting in massive casualties on both sides, as well as collateral damage in the form of free stalkers. In the climax of the battle, an emission was detected by Zulu, a duty faction member. Knowing that there was no viable cover from the emission, save for Yanov itself, Loki ordered a ceasefire and invited the duty force to take refuge with his men at Yanov. As a result of this action, to this day Yanov remains a neutral meeting ground between the two warring factions. August 3rd, events of Call of Pripyat take place. On August 3rd, the Ukrainian government initiates Operation Fairway, a surgical strike into the zone. The goal of Fairway is to establish government control of the zone by striking at the Chernobyl nuclear power plant itself. The operation meets an utter failure when the helicopters transporting the Special Forces team suddenly lose power and free fall to the ground. SBU Agent Major Dektarev is dispatched to the zone in an attempt to uncover what took place and to find who may be responsible. While investigating the disaster, the Major discovers that the survivors of Operation Fairway have been holed up in an abandoned laundromat in Pripyat. He begins to form alliances with free stalkers in the area and moves his newly coined ragtag unit into the abandoned city. Together, the free stalkers and the survivors of Fairway continue with their original mission. They push into the center of the zone and skirmish with the vastly diminished monolith forces still there. Upon securing the center of the zone, the task force is able to regain communications with the SBU and military command. A relief force is sent to the center of the zone, and survivors are evacuated. Strelick also makes plans to leave with the remaining members of Fairway, and offers to share his knowledge and experience with the Ukrainian government. Thanks for watching, guys. I hope you had a comfy time with me. If you enjoyed the video, feel free to like and subscribe for more Stalker content. Until next time, guys, I'll see you in the zone. Anarchists, rebels, burnouts. All these titles describe the faction known as Freedom. Welcome to the Zone. Today's video will discuss the Freedom faction from Stalker. These guys are one of my favorite factions. From their attitude toward the Zone to their love of smoking things, Freedom is one of the most interesting factions in the game. If you enjoyed the video, feel free to like and subscribe for more Stalker content. Without further ado, let's begin. Unlike most other factions vying for control of the Zone, Freedom seeks to simply keep the Zone as it is. Enamored with the Zone's uniqueness and the unique beauty that it brings, the Freedom faction was formed from the free spirits who wish to see the Zone kept as it is. The men and women from Freedom desire a world where all have open access to the Zone and all that it offers. Freedom isn't simply another organized gang of marauders or mercenaries. They're idealists, organized to fight for what they believe in. Freedom has a very undefined organizational structure, which can be seen with the lack of proper military bearing or rank designation. Most Freedom stalkers simply refer to each other as bro or man, and most members of Freedom will use recreational drugs such as marijuana. Stalkers who wish to join this faction will find an easy time, as Freedom is generally open to membership to all who simply enjoy the Zone for what it is. Unlike Duty, who have dedicated themselves to holding back the Zone, fighting against it, and even attempting to destroy it, Freedom stalkers have embraced the Zone. Joining Freedom is not a monumental crusade against the unnatural aspects of the Zone, but rather an embrace of the unknown and an appreciation for the reality-defying anomalies around every corner. Most of the stalkers who end up joining Freedom are deployed on missions to hold back various creatures from attacking Freedom settlements, or they're sent on scouting missions to recover artifacts or valuable information about the Zone. The equipment that Freedom utilizes is generally on par with Duty, and almost always better than the other factions of the Zone. Most of the lightweight soldiers within Freedom prefer to utilize DMRs or marksman rifles. generally utilizing SVDs or other weapons that can engage from long ranges. Contrary to duty, Freedom tends to be more freeform in its combat maneuvers and will employ unorthodox tactics in an attempt to confuse the enemy. Freedom also has access to NATO weaponry and other equipment, giving them an edge in some cases when it comes to engaging their enemies. Freedom and Duty have clashed for years within the zone, either fighting over resources, new locations, or simply just because they hate each other. Beginning almost immediately, the conflict raged on within the zone. This war culminated in the Battle of Yanov Station, where a large Freedom force met with a detachment of duty soldiers. Upon contact, both of the factions dug in and began a long battle. Neither commander could outflank or outgun the other, and soon it became apparent that the fighting was becoming a stalemate and a battle of wills. As the battle raged on, an omission was detected, and in the interest of both factions a ceasefire was declared. To this day, Yanov Station acts as a template for the ceasefire and possibly a peace between the two factions. Members of Duty and Freedom can be seen living in close proximity to one another, as well as trading. For more information on the Duty and Freedom War, check out my Stalker timeline video in the description below. Whether it's their SVDs, their love of smoking, their general attitude, Freedom has earned its place as one of my favorite factions in the Stalker universe. I love almost everything about these guys. While Duty is cool and disciplined and generally just badass, Freedom has a chill factor and a love for the outdoors that simply wins my heart over. What's your favorite faction? Let me know in the comments below. I'm always happy to get feedback from you guys and see what you also want me to do next. Until next time guys, I'll see you in the zone. Welcome to the Zone. In today's Monster Manual episode, we'll be discussing bloodsuckers, one of the most terrifying hazards inhabiting the zone. If you like the content, or would like to see other Monster Manual episodes, feel free to like and subscribe. It sounds cliche, but it really helps the channel.